The silence before the words tonight was quiet, and the city lights glowed faintly in the distance. Keanu Reeves sat by his window, staring at the skyline, his mind lost in thoughts that felt both heavy and gentle. In front of the world, he was a man who carried countless roles, a face known across generations. But tonight, behind closed doors, he was only a man with a heart that beat faster when Alexandra's name crossed his mind. He thought back to the first time they had met in a setting that felt far too ordinary for something so extraordinary to begin. It was a quiet art event, filled with strangers who whispered about paintings and sculptures. But all Keanu noticed was her. Alexandra's calm energy did not compete with the noise of the world. It complemented it. She was not trying to shine, and yet she glowed. He remembered how their first words had been about something simple, almost forgettable yet for him. Unforgettable. You see peace in colors, don't you? Alexandra had asked, her voice soft but steady. Keanu had looked at her, surprised by how she seemed to see through him without trying. Yes, he had said simply. No long explanations, no rehearsed lines, just the truth. And for the first time in a long while, he felt understood without effort. Time passed, and so did countless days of silent support, shared laughter, and quiet companionship. Alexandra became more than someone he admired. She became someone whose presence eased the sharp edges of his life. But still, there was a weight pressing against his chest. He had never said the words that carried both risk and promise, the words that could change the shape of their bond forever. Keanu often rehearsed them in silence, only for them to dissolve before reaching his lips. He feared them because of their power. He feared that by saying them, he might ruin the fragile beauty they had built. And yet, he also feared never saying them at all. There was one evening when they were walking home under the faint drizzle of rain. Alexandra's hair was damp, her laughter rising as she teased him about his habit of always offering his jacket, even when she refused. He looked at her then, her eyes reflecting both kindness and strength, and the words almost slipped out. Almost instead. He smiled and said, "You make rain feel lighter." She looked at him, holding his gaze a moment longer than usual, and though neither said it aloud, they both knew there was more hiding behind those words. As weeks turned into months, the weight grew heavier inside him. Alexandra never pressured him, never asked for labels or declarations. She simply existed with him, in his world, in his silence. That patience both comforted and terrified him. One night, Keanu sat in his apartment with a notebook open in front of him. It was filled with scribbles and sentences, most of them crossed out. Words like "you matter to me" or "my life feels brighter with you," all true, yet none enough. He wanted to give her honesty, not poetry. His phone lit up with her message. "Coffee tomorrow?" Just 2 words. Simple, ordinary, and yet it pulled him out of his maze of thoughts. He typed back, "Always." Sleep didn't come easy that night. He wondered if tomorrow could be the day. Tomorrow, maybe, he could find the courage. The next morning, at the cafe, Alexandra was already there, sketchbook on the table, a faint smile waiting for him. They spoke of small things, the way they always did. Yet Keanu's mind was only on the moment he might gather his courage. Every laugh she gave him, every thoughtful glance, every comfortable silence. It pushed him closer, but as he opened his mouth, a group of fans entered, recognizing him instantly. Their excitement filled in the room. The moment was lost again. He smiled. He greeted. He signed. But inside, the silence of his own heart grew heavier. Walking her home afterward, he realized something painful. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect time. It was about creating one. If he kept waiting, he would lose the chance forever. That night, standing at her door, he lingered longer than usual. Alexandra looked at him, sensing his hesitation. "Keanu, are you all right?" she asked softly. He nodded, though his throat felt tight. The words trembled inside him, louder than ever before. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to let her know that she wasn't just part of his day, she was the reason they mattered. His lips parted, but only silence came. Then she smiled, her hand brushing against his arm gently. "Good night, Keanu." As the door closed behind her, he stood there, still frozen. Tonight was not the night, but soon it had to be. He walked away into the quiet streets, a decision slowly hardening inside him. He could not keep the silence forever. The question was not if he would say it. The question was when. And deep down, he knew that moment would not just change his life. It would reveal the truth of everything he had carried in his heart. Asterisk the weight of unspoken words next morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of Keanu's room, yet it felt dimmer than usual. He sat on the edge of his bed, running his hands through his hair, replaying last night in his mind. He could still see Alexandra's gentle smile, still feel the warmth of her hand on his arm. And yet he also felt the sting of his silence. How long could he carry the words without saying them? He wondered if she already knew. Alexandra was perceptive, almost frighteningly so. She read people the way some read books slowly, patiently, with care for every hidden page. Maybe she saw through him. Maybe she was only waiting for him to find his own courage. Keanu had learned through life that words could heal, but they can also wound. He had always been careful with them, sometimes too careful. But now, silence itself was beginning to feel like a wound dot. Later that day, he met Alexandra at an art gallery. It wasn't planned. She had texted him in the morning, "You should see this one. It will speak to you." He arrived quietly, not announcing himself, and found her standing in front of a large canvas. The painting was chaotic at first glance, splashes of dark tones against bursts of light, as though shadow and brightness were locked in a fight. Alexandra stood with her arms crossed, her expression thoughtful. When she noticed him, her lips curved into a soft smile. "I knew you'd come." Keanu walked closer, staring at the painting. "It looked like conflict," he murmured. "Or balance," she replied. "Sometimes both live in the same space." Her words hit him deeper than she realized. Wasn't that exactly what he felt? The battle between holding his words and speaking them, between the fear of losing her and the hope of finding something greater. They stood side by side, silent for a long while, their presence saying more than conversation could. But inside, Keanu's thoughts burned louder. The gallery was filled with people, but for him, it was only her. The way her hair caught the faint light, the way she leaned slightly forward when she was absorbed in something, the way her calm steadied the chaos inside him. His heart whispered the words again, "I love you." But his lips did not dot as they left the gallery. Alexandra surprised him by saying, "You know, Keanu, people spend their whole lives searching for the right words. Maybe it's not about the words. Maybe it's about timing." He looked at her sharply, wondering if she was speaking to him directly. Her eyes met his, unreadable, but warm. And for a moment he thought she knew everything he had hidden. They walked through the busy streets, yet silence wrapped around them in a strange, intimate way. That night, back home, Keanu picked up the notebook again. His pen scratched across the page as he tried to capture the storm inside him. "You are the calm after my battles. You are the reason I look forward to tomorrow. I don't just care for you, Alexandra. I love you." The words stared back at him, powerful and frightening. He closed the notebook quickly, as if the pages could betray him. The next day, Alexandra invited him to a small dinner with a few close friends. She wanted him to meet people she trusted. It was another step, another layer of closeness. At the dinner table, laughter circled around. Stories were shared, and Keanu found himself watching her more than participating. She was so alive, so generous with her kindness, so effortless in her presence. He felt proud to simply sit beside her. But with every glance, with every laugh she shared, the pressure inside him grew. When the dinner ended, Alexandra walked with him to the door. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "It meant more than you know." Her eyes held his, and he almost said it. The words burned at the edge of his tongue, but fear tightened around him again. Fear of what it could change. Fear of stepping into a space where there was no return. He smiled instead, a smile that masked the storm. "Thank you for inviting me." She tilted her head, as though she wanted to ask something, but chose not to. That night, lying awake, Keanu realized something important. Every mischance was not just silence. It was a risk of losing her to the unknown, to the possibility that she might grow tired of waiting. And deep in his chest, he knew a truth he could not deny anymore. If he did not find the courage soon, he would lose her not to someone else, but to the emptiness his silence created. For the first time, Keanu admitted to himself the time was running out. The moment that almost slipped away. The evening air carried a soft chill when Keanu and Alexandra decided to take a walk by the lake. The city lights shimmered on the surface of the water, scattering like fragments of broken stars. It was quiet except for the faint hum of crickets and the gentle sound of water brushing against the shore. Alexandra wrapped her scarf tighter, smiling at him as he adjusted his pace to match hers. "You always walk slower when you're with me," she said lightly. "I like walking with you." Keanu replied, His voice low, honest. She laughed, a sound that blended with the night, and he felt his chest tighten again. So many nights had passed like this, soft, ordinary, yet extraordinary, because it was her. They stopped at a bench near the water. Alexandra sat down, her sketchbook in her lap, though she didn't open it. Keanu sat beside her, his hands folded, his heart restless. He wanted to say it tonight. He wanted to free himself from the silence that had chained him for so long. But then Alexandra spoke first. "You know what I like about you, Keanu?" He turned to her, his throat dry. "What? You don't need to fill every silence. You let it breathe." She smiled faintly, her eyes on the water. "That's rare. Most people fear silence. You seem to respect it." Her words struck him deeper than he expected. Wasn't that the very reason he had stayed quiet for so long? Because he respected the weight of what he carried. Because he wanted it to mean something when it finally came out. He looked at her, her profile soft in the moonlight, and his heart thudded louder. "Alexandra." He began. She turned to him, waiting, her eyes wide with quiet expectation. This was it. This was the moment. But before he could finish, a group of people passed by, laughing loudly, breaking the stillness. Alexandra looked away, distracted, and Keanu's courage slipped like water through his fingers. The words died in his throat once more. He clenched his hands together, frustration simmering under his calm exterior. Later that night, as he walked her back to her apartment, she spoke softly, almost like a whisper to herself. "Sometimes I feel like you're holding something back." His steps slowed. Her words cut straight into the truth. "Am I wrong?" she asked, turning to face him. Keanu single quotes as lips parted, but no sound came. She studied him for a moment, then gave him a small, understanding smile. "It's all right. You don't have to say anything before you're ready." Those words were kind, but they carried a weight. They gave him space, but they also reminded him that she noticed everything. When she closed the door behind her, Keanu leaned against the hallway wall, his heart heavy. Ready. When would he ever be ready if not now? That night, he dreamed of her walking away from him. In the dream, he chased her through a crowded street, shouting words that never reached her ears. Every time he got closer, she vanished into the crowd. He woke up with his chest aching, his hand reaching out into the empty dark. The next morning, he couldn't shake the dream. He realized it was not just fear holding him back, it was the possibility of loss. Silence was no longer safe. It was dangerous. A few days later, Alexandra invited him to a small gathering at her studio. It was filled with her paintings and drawings, with soft music playing in the background. Friends came and went, but Keanu stayed close to her, watching the way she moved, the way she spoke to everyone with warmth. There was a moment when she walked up to him, her eyes searching his face. "You look distant tonight." "Just thinking," he said. She tilted her head, waiting for more. He wanted to say it, right there, in the middle of her world, surrounded by her art and her people. He wanted to finally speak the truth. But again, the moment passed. She nodded slowly, as though she understood something unspoken. That night, after everyone had left, he stayed behind to help her clean up. She leaned against the wall, tired but smiling. "You don't have to stay, you know," she said. "I want to," he replied simply. They shared a quiet moment, surrounded by half-finished canvases and the smell of paint. His heart beat faster than ever. The silence between them was no longer comfortable. It was charged, heavy, trembling. He stepped closer, and she looked up at him. Her eyes, steady and vulnerable at the same time, made his chest ache. "Alexandra." He whispered again, her lips parted slightly, waiting. But once more, his fear pulled him back. Instead, he reached for a stray brush near her and handed it to her, smiling faintly. "Don't forget this." She accepted it with a soft laugh. But her eyes held a question he could not answer. When he finally walked away that night, he knew the truth he could no longer avoid. The next time, he could not fail. The next time, he would have to say it. The night the silence broke with rain fell heavy that evening, the kind that blurred car lights into red rivers across the wet streets. Keanu pulled his hood tighter as he hurried toward Alexandra's building. She had called him earlier, her voice softer than usual, saying she wasn't feeling well. "I'll be fine," she had insisted. "Just a cold. Don't worry." But worry was all he could do. When she opened the door, wrapped in a blanket, her hair tied loosely, she smiled faintly. "You came." "Of course," Keanu said. Inside, her studio was quiet. the sketches on her desk scattered as if abandoned in a rush. He made her tea, moving around her kitchen with careful hands, and when he brought it to her, she whispered, "You always know what to do." He sat beside her, the blanket slipping slightly off her shoulders. Her skin looked pale, her eyes tired, yet she still carried that calm that always humbled him. They spoke of little things, her unfinished painting, the weather, a book she had been meaning to read, but the silence that followed wasn't the old comfortable silence anymore. It was heavier, filled with something waiting to be said. Keanu felt it pressing against his chest until it hurt. "Alexandra," he began, his voice low. She turned to him slowly, her tired eyes locking with his this time. He couldn't look away. The words rose like a tide, unshakable, undeniable. "I've been holding something back for too long." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't interrupt. She only waited. His hands trembled, and he clenched them together. "I was afraid of ruining what we have, afraid of losing the peace you've given me." But silence has become heavier than fear. Her breath caught Keanu's single quotes as throat tightened. But he forced the words out. "I love you, Alexandra." The room fell silent, the rain outside crashing harder, as if echoing the weight of his confession. For a moment, she just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then her eyes softened and tears glistened at the edges. "Do you know how many times I hope to hear you say that?" she whispered. He blinked, almost disbelieving. You knew." She smiled faintly, though her voice trembled. "I saw it in the way you looked at me, in the way you stayed, even when you said nothing. But hearing it, Keanu, hearing it changes everything." He felt his chest loosen, the chains of silence finally breaking. She reached for his hand, her fingers warm despite her weakness. "I love you too." The word settled over him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For the first time in years, he felt light. They sat there, hands entwined, the rain washing the world outside while inside, everything felt new, fragile, and infinite all at once. Yet, deep inside, Keanu knew this was only the beginning. Saying the words was not the end of the story. It was the opening of a door, one that would lead them into moments both beautiful and testing. Because love was not just about speaking, it was about living. Day after day, through joy and through pain. And as he looked into Alexandra's eyes, he promised himself silently, he would not only say the words, he would prove them. Love tested in the quiet storms morning after his confession. Keanu woke with a weight lifted off his chest. The words had finally been spoken, and they had not shattered the bond between them. Instead, they had deepened it. But as the sun rose, a quiet truth settled in his heart, saying "I love you" was only the beginning. Alexandra texted him early. "Thank you for last night, for everything." He stared at the message for a long while before typing back, "No, thank you for hearing me." Their days together felt different after that. There was no wall of silence between them anymore. Laughter flowed easier, and their conversation stretched deeper. Keanu noticed how Alexandra would smile at him a little longer, how her eyes softened whenever their hands brushed. And yet, love brought not only warmth, but also new storms. A week later, they attended a dinner with a group of industry acquaintances. The room was crowded, filled with loud voices and curious stares. Keanu was used to attention. He had carried it for decades, but he could see how it weighed on Alexandra. People whispered, not cruelly, but with curiosity. Who was she, this woman beside Keanu Reeves? One woman leaned in, her tone polite but pointed. "So, Alexandra, how does it feel to be with someone like him? The world always watching?" Alexandra smiled calmly. "It feels like being with someone I care about." The answer was simple, graceful, but Keanu saw the way her fingers tightened around her glass afterward, how her eyes flickered with unease. Later, when they were alone, he touched her hand gently. "I'm sorry for all of it, the questions, the stares. You don't deserve that weight." She shook her head. "Don't apologize. I chose this. I chose you." Her strength humbled him, but it also made him ache. Love, he realized, was not just about moments of joy. It was about standing together in the storm. Still, doubt crept in. Late at night, when she slept beside him, he lay awake, wondering if his world was too heavy for her, if loving him meant she would lose her peace. A few days later, the text came in a sharper form. Paparazzi photos of them surfaced, her leaving his apartment, him holding her hand. The headlines spun their own stories, some kind, others invasive. Keanu watched as Alexandra scrolled through them quietly, her expression unreadable. Does it bother you? He asked, his voice tense. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. What bothers me is if you think I can't handle it. He blinked, surprised by her firmness. Keanu, she continued softly, I don't need you to protect me from the world. I just need you to stand with me in it. Her words struck deep. Love was not about shielding each other from every wound. It was about standing side by side. Even when the wounds came, he reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Then that's what I'll do. I'll stand with you. She smiled faintly, her thumb brushing over his hand. And I'll stand with you. That night, as rain tapped gently on the windows, Keanu realized something profound. The words I love you were not only a confession. They were a promise to stay, to fight, to endure. And he knew, in the depths of his heart, that their love was strong enough for the storms ahead. Asterisk the forever in their silence. Weeks after their confession carried a different rhythm. The silence between them was no longer heavy or uncertain. It was alive, filled with comfort and belonging. Keanu and Alexandra walked through life as if the world outside could make noise. But inside their bond there was peace. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, they sat on the balcony of her studio. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, the kind of beauty that made words feel small. Alexandra leaned against him, sketchbook closed on her lap. You know what I realized, she said softly. What? Keanu asked. The first time you said I love you, I knew you meant it long before. But hearing it changed something inside me. It was like a locked door opening. He listened, his heart swelling with quiet gratitude. And now, she continued, every silence we share feels different. Not empty, not waiting, just full. Keanu smiled faintly, his hand brushing through her hair. It's strange. I spent so long afraid of saying it. Now I can't imagine not saying it. She turned to him, her eyes steady. Then don't stop. He kissed her forehead gently. And in that moment he understood something deeper than before. Love was not just about words spoken once, it was about choosing to speak them. In ways big and small, every day. Their journey was not without struggle. There were still flashes of cameras, still whispers of strangers, still moments when the world tried to intrude. But each time, they faced it together. Each time, they returned to the quiet strength they had built. One night, months later, after a long day, Alexandra stood at her easel, paint on her fingers, a thoughtful crease on her brow. Keanu watched her, the way she poured her soul into her work, and he felt the words rise again, as fresh and true as the first time. I love you, he said quietly. She looked up, surprise flickering before her lips curved into a smile. You'll never get tired of saying it. Never, he replied, because every time I say it, I feel it all over again. She set down her brush, walked over, and wrapped her arms around him. Then every time you say it, I'll believe it all over again. They stood there, surrounded by unfinished canvases, the smell of paint in the air, and the soft hum of the world outside. And in that moment, Keanu realized something timeless. The first I love you had been the hardest, but it was the beginning of a lifetime of saying it, proving it, and living it. Their love was not a single moment, it was a story written every day. In whispers, in silences, in storms weathered and skies shared. And as Alexandra leaned into him, her heartbeat steady against his, he understood that forever was not some distant dream. Forever was already here, in the quiet promise they had built together. The silence that once held fear now carried only peace. And in that peace, their love would endure.